Last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
And hey, welcome back to another DMR episode right here on KGRAdb. And boy, I'll tell you what, this last week has been a zinger. I was just sitting here just as we were getting ready to go on the air, and I've been thinking about how fast time is apparently zipping by. A month and 2 days ago was Christmas. We're already a month past that. We're basically at the end of February. I looked at my calendar. Today is the 27th of January. 20 days ago, just a day shy of 3 weeks, the wildfires exploded all over Southern California. And I'll tell you, I was sitting on pins and needles here for a while. But this weekend, suddenly the news flipped. We started getting some rain. And instead of fear porn about fires, we started getting fear porn about mudslides. Can you believe it? Oh, man, I'm telling you what. Couple of more days, it's going to be February. We are off and running. A lot of stuff happening in the world today. Of course, the news has been permeated with tales of illegals, violent illegals being scooped up, sent back to their home of record, all kinds of stuff going on. And it's time tonight to sit back, take a break. I got a very special guest and a good friend as our guest tonight, Commander Cobra, who I hear tell, little birdie told me that it's possible sometime in the not too distant future, he may have a show once again back on KGRA. Going to ask him about that. Prior to, his show was called Task Force Griffin, which I got to say, I was very honored to be invited a couple of times to appear on that show with Commander Cobra. Commander Cobra, of course, is a retired military pilot, flew missions all around the damn world, is a veteran of not only the United States Air Force, but the Coast Guard. And if you saw Bad Boys 2, the movie, Cobra was one of the chopper pilots on that. Don't know if you knew that or not. Now you do. And of course, we have once again Mark Center, Gary Cassell joining me in the hosting duties. And with that being said, hell, let's get it on the move. Guys, welcome back to the show. Cobra, it's great seeing you, buddy. How you doing?
Very well, sir, and it's glad to hear that things are great in the greater Los Angeles area. I had to, when you said about the special guest that was joining tonight, I started looking around. who's on the show. But it's great to see you, gentlemen. I'm very happy that Mark is enjoying syndicated television program, his pacing and his desires. And Jagari, oh my God, it's been too long, my friend. Been much too long.
No, man,
not long enough.
not
What do you
long
mean
enough.
too long? Not long enough. So anyway, guys, lots been going on. I got to tell you, as a former law enforcement officer, my feelings aren't hurt very badly about all these miscreants being picked up and taken to the airport, put on an aircraft, and flown back. You know, I had to laugh this morning. I always am up before my wife. And when she wandered out here this morning to get a cup of coffee, and we were just chit-chatting a little bit, and I said, "Did you hear what what El Presidente just did?" And she said, "No, what?" I said, "Well, you know, we tried to send a couple of aircraft, and they were military aircraft, down to Colombia to take some of those guys back home that were here illegally, busted the border, and they refused to accept the aircraft." And I said, "Did you hear what our president did?" And she said, "What?" I said, "Well, first thing he did, he said he was going to hit them with 25% tariffs. In a week, they would increase to 50%. He's taking a look at all the visas of all the Colombians who were up here. I mean, hey, I don't care how you cut it, whether you like the guy or not. He's got brass balls the size of bowling balls. This guy cracks me up. What do you think, Cobra?
Well, anytime you have a leader of a country in South America or Central America that brings up Sacco and Vanzetti in his retort back to the President of the United States, you know you're winning. I don't know if you read his diatribe that he put on after he buckled on this. Look, here's the best way for me to sum this up. I know we're a nation of immigrants. These people do not fit the immigrant legal process. The proper term that's been nullified over the last few decades is illegal alien. I feel bad for people that are families that have done this, but I also feel badly for people who are waiting properly to come across, who spend the money, spend the time, go through the process, and are vetted. And that's lost. That's lost in the discussion. I know countless people who married Americans and still had to go through a lengthy, expensive process to be properly vetted.
You know, I'm going through that right now with Anima.
Right. So, I mean, this is how it works. I've known a number of immigrants, especially in the Northeast, that overstayed their student visa or their tourist visa, got jobs, kind of worked in the shadows. Some were eventually able to work it out. Others had to go home. It's terrible. That's one part of this situation. The other part is we are at war and no one wants to talk about it. We are fighting a battle between narco terrorists, fentanyl distribution, human sex trafficking, human trafficking in various forms that's going on. And it has to stop. There's no upside to this. This is nothing but tragedy.
And if you didn't know, we just a firefight broke out on the Texas-Mexico border today, 3 hours ago. At least that's when the report started, that a suspected cartel ambushed American agents, border agents, and killed at least one.
Right. I heard that just before it came up. And this is going to be the next flashpoint that's going to occur because we have on the border, you have a number of these narco-terrorist organizations that are pretty much the money that they have a very unhealthy relationship with the local government. They have all the techniques and procedures of terrorist insurgent warfare. And there is a reason why the president plans to send more military troops to the border.
I'd like to see the president send in
Chuck
the military, send in the military, the Marine Corps, the Army, preferably airborne, and create a 5-mile deep buffer zone. And if the Mexican government doesn't like it,
That's it.
too bad. Too bad. And then line that with razor wire, claymore mines, and make it a no-go place to go, or they'd be subject to lethal force. I think if that's how they want to play it, then we play it for keeps. Do you agree or disagree?
I think that's too extreme, but I agree with the concept that you're putting there. Begin with, I don't like mines at all, ever. They are, to me, although they're great for a point defense, and I've been in plenty of places where they were used as the defense, or me being on the friendly side of it, I don't like them, and I think they're pretty indiscriminate. I'm not into going into anybody's territory. I don't think we need to enter into Mexico's territory. Let Mexico.
Well, they enter ours.
Well, that's true, and they haven't been dealt with in the last 4 years, and that to me is the simple solution to this.
I kind of think what Don's saying is right in our country. If you have that kind
No, I heard Don, and I'm sorry, Mark. I'm going to correct you. I'll let Don tell me that I'm wrong, but I don't want to enter into Mexico's territory.
Right. I kind of agree with what Don says. However, I would kind of think of it as a wall that should have been built. Not that the wall's the end all, but at least it shows the other countries who we're not effing around, right? Sure. So if we do that same sort of thing that Don is saying on our side and just clamp down, inspecting trucks, inspecting people, and treat it like, I don't know, Poland or somewhere, I think that would go a long ways.
I don't disagree with that at all. I just, you're not going to get me to support mines. I don't think it's a good way to go.
Right. You don't like claymores?
Oh, I love claymores. That's not what you were talking about.
So I've got a little quick story here for you. Good friend of mine from high school. We learned how to skate together. He's a drummer, yada, yada, yada. He moves to Japan to teach English, right? A lot of guys do that. And then he goes from there and he goes to Australia, meets a smoking hot gal, and they go to New Zealand. This was before the movies of the Hobbits were shot there and all that. They go to New Zealand. They're on their way back, and they start checking papers, please. He ain't got nothing. Right. I don't really know what the story is there, right? But he's got nothing. So he basically has to tell his girlfriend, see ya, and immediately they ship him back to Japan. Immediately. In the clothes he was wearing. He couldn't even go pick up his stuff. They said, you're out, and that's it. Boom. Done. I thought that was an interesting, proper way to do it.
From New Zealand?
Yeah. He was going back into Australia, and they wanted to see passports and stuff, and he had nothing on him. And right away, they brought him to an airport. They put him on a plane. They sent him to Japan because he said, that's where I came from. Well, you're going back. And that happened about 20 years ago. But we don't do that. Japan? No. He came back here. He's on his 4th marriage, I think. So,
and he never married the Australian lass?
No, but he sent me a picture, and it's like, wow. Wow. Wow.
If this was a UAP story, I'd start throwing up some flags of doubt. This reminds me of my friend when we were like 13 or 14 who went out to summer camp and met this smoking hot girl from Canada.
Yep.
That none of us ever got to see.
Oh, yeah. That's not.
And the picture suspiciously looked like it came out of a magazine. But all right,
Well, his last wife, young from Germany, if you get my drift, had kids when he was 60, and now they're divorced. It's just his life, right? So,
well, anybody who can successfully maneuver around the Pacific without a passport apparently is impressive.
well, it was 20 years ago, 25. It was before everybody started clamping down after 9/11s and things of that sort. So, and I think he probably had them. He just left them, right? Because he felt so comfortable that he just didn't bring them around with him,
Yeah.
I guess.
Again, Mark, I don't know the situation. I'd love to talk to your friend. I don't understand how he didn't go to the embassy to get that straightened out, to get a temporary passport,
Right.
ask for representation. There's just a lot of things there.
Yeah. I can only give the story that he told me, and yeah. So he's a smart guy, but he's not that bright. If you get my drift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never fallen in either of those categories.
Well, last week, if we would have been on the air, one of the things we wanted to address was the News Nation story with the egg and the pilot, etc., about all of that. So this past week on UAP Crossfire, Commander Cobra, which is one of the co-hosts, gave what I thought was an absolutely stellar dissertation on how he felt about this whole story and whether, as it was being touted, this thing might have been extraterrestrial. And almost everybody there came to the conclusion, no, it wasn't. But have you given that much more thought, Cobra, about...
Yeah, and we have a couple folks from UAP Crossfire audience that have written me extensively. And one of them went to explain that he viewed almost a 3-hour long version of that and explained to me some of the things, the impressions that they had, and looking at the terrain issues that we brought up. And of course, everyone has the problem. Where's the downwash? There's nothing in that that really shows downwash. Now, I have to say that I have not watched the 2-hour long portion of it. He did correct us that we brought up on the show that there was an emotional or a psycho-emotional reaction that the man at the center of this claimed that he had, but it wasn't to the egg. It was to another sighting experience that he had.
Oh, really? That's not the way they presented it.
Yeah. So again, there's more out there. So to get back to it, just the mechanics of it. No, I really haven't changed on that. I think there's probably a possibility that it is an actual thing that is being slung low underneath the helicopter. I still have questions. The one thing that one of our audience participants sent me in the email was he found it very difficult to understand this person's military background. Because it seems to get sketchy, and he based it against, family members during World War II, during Vietnam, understood, what their careers were like. So in partial defense, I would say that, as you know, Don, people that get into the very extreme and special operator places have different levels. And they have the inability to easily talk about their careers. They can't trace it out very well. Unfortunately, there seems to be a trend when you have that come up. And Mark, I think you'll know where I'm going with this. It seems to be a consistent kind of story. It seems like a Progressive commercial. Not that they sponsor this show or any other show that I'm on, but there's sort of kind of like a beat. I think they should. I'm asking them. I think they should be supporting us. But there's a certain there's a formula that they go through for the show. Who's going to be the serious one? What's going to be the goofy thing? And in about a 35, 55 second commercial, they cover the whole thing and they get you to say, in a funny way, why you should be doing this. Right. So I see the same pattern come up with a lot of folks that claim military experience. One of them that was sent to me was a former F-16 pilot was explaining, that this looked like NVGs and how it was being done. And, it took him a long time to be qualified on NVGs, which I understand. The way that they brought their qualification in was a long period. Plus, they're moving at extremely high speeds when they're doing close air support or any kind of ground interdiction. But I also point out, as Gary knows, when I went to flight school with the Army in the early 80s, they had us flying solo, 2 student pilots at night on NVGs. So that's just how it operated, in the difference of aircraft communities, missions, all those kind of things going on. So looking
which
I
want to point out, learning how to fly on NVGs is really nightmarish because of, other than just learning to look at things differently through NOGs, it's also you're looking 2-dimensionally.
Right. You don't have
while flying 3-dimensionally.
Yeah, you don't have the 3D effect. But quite honestly, unaided night is not much better. You don't really have 3 dimensions at unaided night because when you're using the rods of your eyes, they don't give you good depth perception. And the type of goggles that we're using now are absolutely phenomenal. I was still using the cutaway trucker goggles. In fact, they had a very funny story. On the outside of your goggles were covers because if you had accidentally turned them on in a lit room, you would damage the screen, the phosphor screen that the light is enhanced and sent to. That's what gives you that greenish picture. So the Army, so that you could check them, put a little pinpoint in each one of the little plastic covers. And then when you got in the aircraft and it was dark, you took them off and then, you had them on your helmet and off you went. So you could check it in a room, low light, to make sure everything worked. And then you have the extra batteries. We had whole emergency procedures where you were still flying the airplane and you would change the battery out, which is pretty hard to do in an aircraft that requires both hands. It's an incredibly well-run training program. Well, apparently one time, I guess this would be just post-Vietnam, NVGs were coming to be very popular. One poor pilot took off and he forgot to take the covers off. So at night, he had this little pin camera shooting onto it, and he strained his eyes for so badly they had to bandage him up for about 24 hours. And then what the Army figured out was, okay, to prevent this from ever happening again, they didn't put the pinpoint right in the center anymore. They off-centered it so you could do the check, but you couldn't get a reliable picture and you knew to take them off. That's just the human aspect going on. But Don, to answer your question, I'm still doubtful. I think we have a pretty good chance, better than 50%, that this is an actual sling of something. I don't see any indications that would tell me that it's extraterrestrial. It's a very unusual shape. I can't
load
find
of tampons maybe to Michigan or somewhere.
I guess we could go that way. I thought it was Minneapolis that needed them, but I guess we're just playing.
If I can ask a question to the more professional guy who would be above me right there. And I didn't hear the UAP show, so you may have covered this. You probably did. Much like Ketchberg, if that happened the way they did, if this was something of high interest and needed to be kept away from the public, et cetera, and protected, would they have shrouded this, encased this, protected this, and not just have it loose like that in the lifters you would lift a horse with and just drop it on the ground? Not drop it, but not to protect it.
Yeah. So, Mark, you bring up a couple, and Ketchberg is a really interesting one because that's what I started thinking about at the beginning. So, if it is a satellite or an extraterrestrial vehicle, I would imagine that it has some weight. Looking at the highest loads that can be lifted by really big helicopters, H-47s, H-53s, you're getting into the 20, 30,000 pound category. But even though it's a big helicopter, and with a high line, you're going to have interaction with the ground in some part. And I'm not seeing that. So that makes me think that it might have been a smaller helicopter as claimed. And it may have been encased. But what makes it interesting to me is, why would you pick an egg shape? There are all kinds of canisters. There's Sealand containers that have 4 points that you can stabilize out to a single point.
Right.
This thing doesn't look like it is easy to handle. It's a very interesting sling that appears to be attached to it. It looks like it's almost adhering to the outside shell, or the outside skin of this egg shape. So that's really, really unusual to me.
Now, did you guys discuss? You just said that generally there's two people. With the two people in there, can you fairly simply remove a hand or two to be able to shoot the video at the same time as you're going to land?
To me, that there's no way a pilot flying a helicopter is shooting that video. It's way too stable. And there could be the possibility that someone really held their head very, very steady, looking down the hatch or looking out the side door if this was done by the hoist. If you do it by the hoist, it's going to be much less weight. And if you're doing it through the cargo hatch, if the aircraft has it, not all aircraft that have belly cargo hooks have a hatch that you can access through there.
Right.
But that is a very stable picture. And nowadays, with the GoPro type technology that's almost everywhere, it wouldn't surprise me that this is a camera mounted on the aircraft, because it's a very stable picture.
Right.
So you don't have someone holding a camera or, laying down, because even that, just respiration and moving around, you would see something. That's a very stable camera. I don't see the pilot doing it unless the pilot had some remote camera.
Right.
Or to control a remote camera that was mounted on the outside of the aircraft. Now, if this is a recovery unit, I would fully expect it to be video and instrumented out. So that doesn't surprise me that we would have it. I was telling the guys last week, the Coast Guard on their hoist, their rescue hoist, has a camera, partially for recording the mission so it can be briefed and debriefed how it went. And also, when you get good footage, you want to put it in for public affairs. Hey, look at the Coast Guard. Make sure you give us money because we're out here saving you. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that. And that's pretty common technology now.
So is it a trick of the light, or did I see, and others who have commented on it, it looks like where let's say the two cables or ropes go around it and they're in the netting, seem to slightly press in and deflect the body a bit.
I picked up a body deflection, especially when it lays down on the ground, so it has more of a membrane.
Yes.
And that's reminiscent, and Jerry will probably know what I'm talking about, when you move fuel bladders and blutes around.
That's exactly what fuel bladders.
But I've never seen a fuel bladder with that kind of a shape. When you see a fuel bladder, first of all, they're usually dark. They're never a clear color, because the material that you have to make for it, and it's generally for diesel fuel, which is biological diesel, is much more biologically active. You're trying to minimize the chances of molds growing, and it's a thick material. It can even be dropped to a certain extent. They're designed, some of them are designed to be pushed out of like a C-130 very low over the ground on a pallet and survive, so that you can set up a temporary refueling point. So again, it has that kind, but not even as much as I would expect if that was a liquid.
Yeah.
It's just a strange shape for that.
And it appears to have no weight at all, because
it's very lightweight. My guess is it's very lightweight.
Hey,
and that helps
has anybody
with
thought,
have downwash.
Has anybody thought it could have been an egg from Godzilla?
Hey, come on, come on, man. We're trying to take this serious with a serious guest, Don. Come on.
Yeah, Don.
Well, it was a thought that just came to me.
I know that
immediately I'm having flashbacks to the 1960 movie Monster Island.
There you go.
The little Japanese boy with his radio contacting Monster Island.
Must give birth
there you go.
to Mothra.
So I know it doesn't surprise you, but I'd like to hear what you guys think about, because I only heard this tonight. Through the editing process, they give the casual viewer the clear impression that his emotional response was to that event. All right, because I watched that thing twice, and now you're telling me there's longer footage out there and this and that, and it had nothing to do with that event. Isn't that interesting that they can't even tell the straight story, right? Because that's not the straight story.
Why would you start with a truncated version? That's bad juju to do that.
Well, it's not only
If
that;
you're
it's
doing
the
an exposition.
It's to edit it like that.
At all.
I'm that's a problem.
Well, if you're trying to put the trailer method out, where you're trying to get people to tune into a larger event, I guess that's why you do the kind of length that they did. It's frustratingly short,
Right?
And it doesn't really allow for any real good analysis. There are things about it that really throw me off. You don't see any ground crew.
Yes.
I gave an explanation last week that, let's say that it was immediately after it was picked up that something's gone wrong and you need to set it down to either stabilize the load or have that. And it's a very, very short time. So maybe when the clock goes a little bit longer, you'll see people immediately rushing over to, fix something on the sling or to adjust it or something like that.
Right.
So that part throws me off greatly. The aerodynamics, as I understand vertical flight in this type of aircraft, with a little bit of experience over the years and a little bit more in sling ops than probably most, just shows me that this is very, very light, that it was very, very stable on that sling line. I don't see a lot of movement on that, but that sling line didn't look like it had any advanced technology down it, meaning I didn't see a release hook at the bottom of it. I didn't see any kind of illumination activity at the bottom, but those are things that are pretty prevalent now. So it wouldn't surprise me that the next picture shows the helicopter going off to the side and you see the line getting slack so that it could come down a little bit low and have that line get into like a J shape, a curve shape, as it's stabilized on the ground and people come in and check it, and then they come back up and they would lift it up and go off to go do it. I also explained last week that particular shape doesn't allow you to fly very fast, regardless of anything that's going on. Genghis Khan, I'll get to that in a second. It's a good question, but were they trying to stabilize it? Did they have something happen? And I don't expect that they traveled very far with it. Now, is this some kind of a container that something was put inside? Again, as we said earlier, I don't see how that fits because it just doesn't give a good stable shape. Even if you were taking it over the water and you didn't, and you were afraid that you would drop it and you wanted it to float, there are plenty of more stable shapes that float. So I again, doesn't fit. Now, Genghis Khan asked, do I think it's the Tic Tac? Everything I've seen about the Tic Tac has more of a capsule shape to it, not a traditional egg shape. And if it is what I think the Tic Tac is, I don't see how this could possibly be it, because I would imagine the Tic Tac has quite a bit of mass.
Yeah, and a hard candy shell.
And if it's what I think it is, and it's operating, I don't think you can use anti-gravity and do a sling load at the same time.
Right.
Again, my manual never got that far, and my experience never got me that far. But I don't think it fits what I think the Tic Tac is.
Here's a funny analogy. So we get the autopsy, the alien autopsy, and the creature has 6 fingers and 6 toes. By and large, up until that point, unheard of. Not completely, but there was such a small reference to 6 fingers and 6 toes regarding aliens, not the Nephilim, but the aliens, that it came out of nowhere, right? So now we get this egg shape right after the Tic Tac shape. Kind of interesting, right? It's kind of like, look at this over here, because this is a shape we're all aware of. This is a shape that we see every morning, right? This weird egg shape thing. And it just seems, I don't know, it just seems a little interesting that you're right. What would you use an egg shape for in military, space travel, boating, for storage, right? What would you use this for?
So the closest I can come to looks like the two halves, and I don't see any seam line to do this, but on a number of the ships that I was on, we had enclosures around radars that would look like either half. Some of them were very, very spherical, and others had more of that pointed cone part shape of the egg. But I never saw one the whole way. Could this thing fit in a egg holder on a ship, and have sensitive gear on the inside of it? Maybe. I again, total conjecture. I'm searching hard to figure out what it is. I guess the last part is this some kind of biological container that we've recovered? That's the latest thing that the path I've gone down looking at it. Not taking away from Don's earlier remark, but it is his show. Is this Godzilla egg, or did it come from Monster Island? Right. Maybe not dismissed right off the bat. Are we transporting the membrane that has some kind of biological entity inside it, recovered from a crash?
I knew it was Fauci. I knew it was Fauci.
So I guess function gain research, not gain of function research.
So
recently, on Facebook, among other places on the internet, I've seen some short videos detailing people at sea, out at sea, biologists, whatever, that have encountered some very strange phenomenon, with the implication being that perhaps Megalodon, the giant shark, the nightmare, I guess, of any mariner on the ocean, the nightmare scenario, if they were still around, might in fact, in limited numbers, still be around. Now, Cobra, you were in the Coast Guard. Did any of your comrades, any of your buddies, ever have any brain dusting sessions about something like that? Have you ever considered that?
So, interesting you bring it up. I spent, as you know, 3 years north in the Arctic and 3 in the Antarctic, flying off one of our icebreakers. Actually, 2 of our heavy icebreakers, the Polar Sea and the Polar Star. Sea's no longer active. Polar Star is. Great ship. And on those ships, especially on the northern ones, we had a lot of scientists. Very interesting work that was being done. Some of it I'm not sure I can even talk about, but I will tell you it was connected with Chernobyl, one of the things that we were doing, a reconnaissance. Others were doing ice cores. Others were doing, different kinds of marine mammal studies. Very, very interesting work. And at night, there would be some really interesting free speak, different doctors would go through, and they had their grad students with them. There was a lot of classes that they gave on board. Very, very interesting. It's really where I first heard about climate, global warming, climate change. And it was very funny. I'd say 2/3, man-made climate change, 1/3 absolutely not. But everybody agreed that climate is in a constant state of change. I don't think most people would disagree with that. So it was pretty funny to watch, especially one professor and doctor I remember. He would actually kind of start the argument between 2 vehement opposing camps on climate change, and then back out and just kind of watch it, get popcorn, and just watch these 2 guys just go at each other for about 20 minutes about, getting close to the point of just saying you're stupid. That was about the pirates coming up. So let's say that it is. If it's a shark, this is a different way than shark eggs are. Shark eggs tend to be in a thing called a mermaid's purse. And what that looks like is a rectangular shape. And at the end of each rectangular shape are kind of like hook tendrils that come out, top and bottom. And inside that case, which they nicknamed the mermaid's purse, is the fertilized embryo of the shark. The female shark drops those out, and it's fairly hard. It's a membrane, so they can get oxygen return from it. And then as the shark grows inside that, that's when it breaks out. I'm pretty sure that's how all sharks operate. Now, maybe the Megalotron doesn't. Maybe it has something special on that. But, John, you do point out a very interesting aspect. We are seeing more things show up in the ocean, partially from better technology and able to detect it, and then the changes that are happening in the oceans. La Nina, La Nino, the different patterns that are going on. We had an earthquake here today in Maine. Didn't know anything about it. I had people call me, "Are you all right? Is everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." "Where are you?" "Well, where you're walking we just had an earthquake. 4.4. I know you people on the West Coast snicker at 4.4. You don't even bat an eye.
Absolutely.
4.4 is mix my drink kind of movement. But out here, got a lot of people's attention.
Yeah.
So it could be something biological, and it might be something interesting to recover. The terrain doesn't really match up well that it came out of the water to me.
So,
okay. Hang on a second, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, there are scientists that are attempting to bring back
the woolly mammoth.
Yeah. The mastodon. Now, I have mixed feelings about that. On the one hand, I think that would be fascinating to see. But on the other hand, would that be a major mistake? If you bring that back, you got to bring back the Smilodon, okay, to prey upon that. And if you bring back the Smilodon, you need a cleanup crew, dire wolves, okay? Is that next? I mean, what kind of a just because we can do something. Now I'm paraphrasing.
Yes.
From Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Just because we can do something, should we do something?
Nature finds a way.
I also have to point out that the only things that we should be mucking with are things that we caused. And like the dodo, we hunted them into extinction. Natural selection had nothing to do with it. So once you start delving into natural selection, that's when you're playing God, in my opinion, scientifically. But if you were to go to replenish the world with dodo birds, dodo birds aren't going to take over the world because, well, they're really fucking stupid to begin with. They're easy
but they
to
taste
hunt.
good.
But they taste good,
Yes, there you go.
according to old recipes. Not that I know myself, but I'm just saying we shouldn't be messing with anything. Trying to bring anything. Bringing the woolly mammoth back is ridiculous.
So back to the egg.
Mark, before it's asked, I'm 50-50 on the woolly mammoth. Go ahead, Mark.
Only because you think it might be tasty. So
yeah, exactly.
No, I don't eat red meat. So no.
So you probably talked
red?
about this on the UAP show, but for the people who are hearing this and me, I don't know anything about night vision. Don has some older stuff. So when I looked at that thing, my uneducated
starlight.
Yes. My uneducated mind, when I'm looking at that thing and I see a super strong shadow coming from the left, hitting the egg and putting a very dark shadow on the ground, I'm thinking, well, to my uneducated mind, that means that there's a very strong light source on that side of the egg. And I've been told that that's not necessarily the case with night vision. Why don't you tell me, Commander?
So night vision generally enhances available light, usually coming from astronomical sources, moon and star. So if you have a flashlight, light a cigarette, any kind of photon illumination, it will show up very, very bright. So I want you to realize that we're talking about using on a dark night, straight starlight is how you're seeing what's going on. That's why it has a greenish color, because it is a phosphorus screen. You accelerate the available reflected light from stars and the moon, and sometimes man-made sources.
Right.
And then that hits a screen, and that's what you're actually looking at. When you look through night vision goggles, you're not seeing the real world. You're seeing an image a few millimeters away from your eye that you can adjust and focus and get all that. So you're actually projecting a picture onto this screen, and you're looking at the back side of the screen. That's what you're seeing. When people talk about IR, it tends to be reddish in color, although it can be manipulated because you're working on heat sources. Okay. So what throws me off a little bit what it looks to be light or shadowing that's happening there is it either is an IR illuminating light, which has a very low light output. In fact, when an IR light is on, unaided, you can't see it. It could also be in a laser realm where it's in a very, very wide beam, again, in that spectrum where you can see it on your goggles but not see it with visual light. That can be very dangerous because that kind of laser can actually burn your retinas, and you don't realize it until after you've been hit because it's invisible. You don't even know that you have the light hitting you. Although if you have the nods on, it'll protect you because it's not going direct into your eyeball. So what you see there makes me think that there may be another source of light, possibly another helicopter, could be a ground vehicle that is projecting an IR kind of light into that scene, which kind of lends me back to this was an unplanned set down, or the people to receive it weren't there. It doesn't seem like this clip talks about it. Genghis Khan asked earlier, do you think it's being played in reverse, where this is the initial lift up and then it was going away and then they were bringing it back? I guess it could be. None of the motion looks like it's backwards. I don't know a better way to describe that. But I tend to be, when you play a tape back, you can tend to tell that the motion doesn't seem to be in the proper order of things. But
so
that explains. IR works on heat. So when on the airplane that I flew, and I still fly now doing work, my sensor operator in the back is operating a very sensitive IR sensor. It's looking for heat. It's looking for the contrast between hot and cold, and you can shift the picture where hot is white or hot is black. And it gives you kind of a negative image. When I'm flying on the nods up front, if someone lights a cigarette, he'll probably see the heat to help drive the sensor to go look at it. But if somebody puts on a flashlight, I will probably see it before he does because the flashlight isn't generating a lot of heat and it's not in the spectrum of that IR, if that makes sense.
So if that object down there was either heated or frozen, how would that change what we're seeing with the technology that they use?
So if it's heated or frozen, it's going to reflect light slightly different. So whatever's happening internally to it or is on the surface of it, I've had things that have been frosted over and they reflect a lot of light. You get a dazzling effect. It almost looks like the glitter or rhinestone kind of effect on it. Mm-hmm. I've had things that are warm, because they are warm, actually absorb some of the wavelength because the surface starts to not reflect the light as cleanly as it could. So those are ways that could affect it. It does have an appearance to me that it's being illuminated from the outside. I don't see something that looks like there's a light or a source inside it. It doesn't appear to be. That's just more of a feeling that I get. I can't give you a real hard point. Right, looking at it, it has that look that it's being illuminated, which could possibly be right from the helicopter itself.
Right.
Well, your aircraft that you just mentioned a minute ago.
Yep.
With your rear seater running the IR.
Right.
I've been on a couple of times manhunts where we've been looking for somebody and they've overflown aircraft looking for heat sources. Okay. Have you guys ever been involved in that?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, my life in Iraq was commensurate with that kind of activity. Everything from watching people digging holes for IEDs and remember the T-shirt that I could never get made because they wouldn't let me make it over in Iraq. Plant IUDs, not IEDs. I thought that would in English would have been a great shirt. But alas, I was not allowed to reach my artistic potential. Once again, denied.
Did you get asked the question, where's your military bearing on that one?
You know exactly where my bearing is there, buddy.
Due north.
So a quick rundown for me and other people that aren't going to know this. What generally are the slings made out of, the different materials, the cables? What are those generally made out of, and what can those generally lift?
Okay, so I've lifted large trucks, 2,000 to 3,000 pounds, depending on the helicopter, fairly easily. The Huey helicopter, which some people said that this was being flown from a Huey.
Well, when you hear the audio, that's what that is. That's it.
Yeah, I'm not buying that because I never hear an engine change.
I don't know if that's the true audio, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. To me, the audio appears to be dubbed. It would be my best.
It does. It doesn't match what's going on because you should be hearing other sounds along with that helicopter blade.
Especially the engine. All I'm hearing is rotor blades, and I'm not hearing the engine surging up and down.
Exactly. So all you're hearing is wash.
Mark, before we go to break, to answer your question, a lot of the slings are that kind of flat belt material that can carry, I've seen them rated to 10, even 20,000 pounds. There are metal cables that can go as well, and there are cables that are used that have data wiring inside it that you can connect to whatever that activity in the bottom, which again, I find interesting that I can't detect that here. When I look at the sling cradle or the blanket that this is sitting in, and I told you it appears to be attached, it looks like it has either thin metal or a nylon stabilizing. It looked like a four-way connection on the four corners of that sling that we're holding it, cradling it. And that goes to a center point pedestal that connected to the cable, and then the cable goes up and it attaches to the belly hook, or it could be the hoist if it's a really light thing. The hoist would be about 600, maybe 800 pounds max. Hoists are a lot less because they're really designed to move people. It's not really an effective way to put, equipment and stuff back and forth. It's just extreme. Coast Guard, we used to put a very small pump in a container and then bring it in. So there's various materials. This has a very round shape to me. It has, looking at it, but I can't tell you just by looking at the clip, but it has a very circular kind of look to me on this. So it's probably like a logger's cable, if it's what I think it is. And those tend to be metal. And if you ever watch these guys with the logging, it's unbelievable. They come in, there's a guy on the ground or gal on the ground. They connect up the log, and the guy or the gal that's flying it picks it up. They have a big bubble window on the side of it. They look over, they're watching the whole time, and then they fly real fast because it's a log and it's just trailing on its end. And then they come down, they slow down. They usually can swing it out. They're that good at it. And when they swing it out, they lay it down, and it's right along all the other logs. And they're able to either disconnect it remotely. Generally, that's how they've been doing it. Or they have something in the ground. As soon as it's there, disconnects it. Because it's all about time, money. Get back up to the hillside, grab the next log, bring it down.
Right. One last quick thing, Don, before we go. We can talk about this when we get back. If this thing was in water or whatever, you might be able to have guys down there to help wrap this thing around it, right? But if it was on the ground, you're going to have to lay that stuff out, roll it on there, and then hook it all up, right? That's something nobody's talking about. How did they get this around it?
They claimed in the documentary or whatever the hell that was, this was 20 feet in length, roughly 20 feet in length.
Right.
So depending upon the weight, of course, the thing that makes sense to me, they would have to lay that sling out,
right,
and then somehow jostle that on.
Well, you have to roll it because when they placed it on the ground, it moved fairly easily. It was rolling around. So it just it's interesting that some people say, well, there wasn't anybody on the ground because they would have been emotionally affected like that guy. That's the problem with the editing, right? And it's like, well, okay, but now I know that it was edited, so it had nothing to do with that.
Hey, Decker.
Yeah.
I want you to just say that. I want to just say that Mark's emotionally affecting me right now.
Yes.
Is he?
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. He sometimes emotionally affects
Look,
me
my
too.
mojo's working, man. Come on.
Gary always emotionally affects me. So
I've made him cry many times.
Yeah, but in a good way.
Combat enemas. That story alone is enough to make anybody bring a tear to their eye.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, we've got let's see,
less than a minute.
Roughly 30 seconds. So let's wrap it up here. We'll pick it up on the other side. This is Dark Matters Radio, brought to you exclusively by KGRAdb. And when we get back, well, who the hell knows where we're going to go? I don't know. I'll talk to the guys and see what they have to say. Or not. It's hard to say. But we'll be back.
Hey members, the new KGRAdb app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRAdb programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRAdb.
Are we alone in the universe? The most important question facing humanity is on the verge of being settled once and for all. The Mutual UFO Network has been at the forefront of this journey for nearly 50 years. Our members worldwide are dedicated to the research, documentation, and awareness that will shape the future of humanity. Won't you join us?
Are you looking to go on a faraway journey that is magical and mysterious, reaping on mystical legends? If so, then Mysterious Adventure Tours is perfect for you. Imagine a voyage to explore ancient mysteries of Ireland, haunted majesties of Scotland, or their chilling Birth of the Vampires in Romania. These small, esoteric getaways are limited and do fill fast. So, go to MysteriousAdventureTours.com and book your trip soon.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at KGRAdb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at KGRAdb.com.
And we are back. And while we were on break, I had some strange thoughts. And I did. I had some strange, and is actually, Deuce, it involves you. Now, Commander Cobra lives in the extreme northeast. Okay. He's basically rubbing legs and thighs with Canada. Now, where he lives, there's a lot of wood, a lot of forestry, a lot of bush out there. And the last
he said
I mean,
Bush.
several
He said Bush.
obviously, I'm going to have to point out that the IUD T-shirt may have inspired some of this conversation.
Yeah, I know,
it's
right?
it's possible. It's possible. But anyway, I want to just for a little bit. I want to get into cryptids. Okay. Now I've been seeing some videos of late alleging, okay, a cryptid creature that has allegedly been encountered in places like Appalachia, here in Northern California, other places where there's a lot of forestry, a lot of woods, and it has included a creature known collectively. And by the way, a few years ago, before she passed on, and I can't think of her name right now, but she was a reporter that did some extensive research and reporting on a creature known as the Dog Man. Okay. And by all accounts, it sounds like it was actually grabbed from a werewolf movie. All right. Dogmen that are, and they've also been reported in Native American tradition. I interviewed a couple of fellows, actually on 2 occasions, Navajo policemen who had some very weird experiences with that. Now, Commander Cobra, up in your area, have you heard? Now, I'm sure you've heard of reports of Sasquatch, Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's not as popular up here as what you're in the cryptid stuff up here. Now, I think you're talking about Linda Godfrey, if I remember the name.
That's the lady, Linda Godfrey.
Wonderful lady. Nice work. She was probably one of the better people you would hear on an interview. She had a really good sense for the art of investigative journalism and putting stuff down. Sorry that she has moved on, but nice lady. We have the Bridgewater Triangle up here, which is famous or infamous, depending on it, where people have experienced in a triangular kind of traced out line between 3-4 different major communities in the New England states, sightings of various animals. The Dogman, the Chupacabra version of it that you hear about down when you get onto the U.S.-Mexican border is another variation. The shape-shifting of Native Americans and having the wolf kind of figure brought in, that creature has human characteristics. It doesn't seem to be as much as a blend as it's a wolf that walks upright, and it has more of a almost like arms for the front legs in its conduct. Lots of interesting discussion, folklore into it. As of late, recently, I have heard very, very little on that. I remember a time, though, in the 60s and 70s where those sightings came up, but they just never seemed to carry very much weight or time for getting people to repeat it. And obviously, much like the UFO, UAP, very few photographs. And this is another time that I would expect, with the handheld computer capabilities and video studio capabilities that we have, that we would capture some more of it. You know, that there would be, even if it was a fleeting, fast image, you know, on that. And I understand, you know, a lot of theories are, well, you know, they can sense this, they know that, that's how they keep from being seen. I won't dismiss it. I think that the whole cryptid thing is amazing. You know, when we talk with our various folks out there, there's a very interesting line that seems to always intersect with UAP, UFO activity with cryptids on the ground. Is a portal opened up? Is there, does this stimulate this kind of activity? But the Bridgewater Triangle, for anybody who's interested, is a really, really interesting. It goes back to the original settlers when they showed up here. And New England, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, is the first recorded UFO incident in our records. I'm sure that Native Americans probably had in their records as well other activities. So,
what type of cryptid reports have come out of that area?
Well, they are creatures that do not fall into the standard categories of dogmen. These are very strange looking entities when they appear. They take on almost a cross species of mammal and reptile. There's been various reports all through centuries of these showing up, being seen on these trails. And although the New England states have some very densely populated areas, you leave a suburban urban area and you're very rapidly in deep woods. You can be in a very isolated area very, very quickly. And there are still areas that are preserved. A very interesting side note that I'll bring up, there is a New England story. It's been documented to some extent that I forgot which faith it is. I don't want to misidentify Shakers, but it might have been that they had found water that would preserve life for a long, long time if you drank it. And it was there's a spring that's still I guess it's protected. Its location is protected, but I've seen some documentaries where people have visited and they've tasted the water. At one time, it was bottled and sold. So I guess we started that business pretty early on for its properties that go on. So it's a kind of an interesting area when you look at some of the stuff that comes up. But these cryptids that have been seen tend to be four-legged creatures, and they have this mix between mammal and reptile kind of characteristics.
Well, let me ask you this: have there been reports that, for example, farms have lost animals that they've attributed to this? People losing their domestic dogs, their cats that they've been apparently preyed upon? Anything like that connected with these stories?
I haven't heard or seen anything now that would line up with any recent stories. There are, if you get a chance to do the Strange New England series of books, there's some really great stuff that's written in there. I have never heard in all the time, and I was away for quite a bit, my youth until my early 20s when I left with the military and came back in my mid 40s. First location was upstate Vermont, where I literally was on the U.S.-Canadian border. And then my wife and I, we settled in Maine after that. So I've never really heard much come up. I don't think we've ever had the kind of animal mutilation and that kind of encounter here. But it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Two things, though. As I said, the space of New England is fairly small in comparison to the rest of the country. So activity shows up pretty quick here, meaning if you had any kind of government operation, if you had aircraft moving around, there's a lot of people that would notice that kind of stuff. Where after being out in the West, and especially the Southwest, the desert states, it's amazing, the difference in physical geography. I mean, it's just I can travel through almost all the states in 8 hours, and there are times you can't get across Texas in 8 hours, or parts of the Southwest. I will draw people's attention to the International Cryptid Museum is located in Portland, Maine. The director of it is Lauren Coleman. He is an accomplished researcher and author, and it's a nice take in. I have been unsuccessful and have given up over the years trying to get Lauren to come on as a guest. He made it clear to me that my old show, just what maybe the new show, Don, will entice him. But he just made it clear that he kind of thought what I was doing was silly. So, and I thanked him. I thank him for his time, and I do like to plug his museum. He works pretty hard at stuff. And
he thought Task Force Griffin was silly.
He thought it was silly. Yeah, but that may be my interpretation word of how he phrased it on that. But I enjoy going to his museum, and I pick up books from time to time and videos. He's got some really good stuff on Bridgewater Triangle from the research, but he's also a worldwide investigator. And of course, it centers mainly on the Yeti, Bigfoot, Sasquatch kind of studies. And, that's an interesting one all on its own. But the dog men, is a very interesting one, how it shows up and its repeated parts of different parts of cultures before they intersect it. There's these exchanges. It reminds me of the kinds of things that you would experience or see. I don't know if you've ever met people that think that the Earth is much younger than what we think, and that the geographical period is much more comprised or compressed. And that's their explanation why in so many cultures on the globe, you have the mention of dragon or dragon type beasts, because they were around much longer and much later into our time record. And that's why they show up in places like Asia, Europe, all through the Middle East. There are creatures that are like this. And if you look at the weather record, we brought it up earlier. In the Middle Ages, Britain was much warmer than it is now. So if you have a large reptile that needs the warming effects because of it being a cold-blooded creature, that does make sense. I think it's a worthy point to make that all these activities can be a mixture. Now, it's funny you bring this. My newest dog, I don't think she'll come any closer. Come here, baby. We just adopted a dog about a month ago. And we didn't realize it when we did that it was going to give us celebrity status. I'll see if I can grab it here. I don't know if you can see Bailey.
Oh, yeah. Bailey? Don, it's Bailey.
No, Bailey's here.
Now, I bet you said that, Don, and Bailey just ran over looking like, why'd you say my name?
Mrs. Cobra stopped by a wonderful dog rescue just to give a donation.
Yeah, of course.
And then came back, and she had a look in her face that I either knew we were getting a new dog or she had had a car accident. She didn't know. So Bailey looks very much like my dog Bear. She's just she's a Hungarian version of a farm protection dog, and she has been with us for a month, and she's doing pretty well. Nice. Zeppelin the pig and her have yet to really bond. That's the last of the networks.
Don, don't you find it interesting with the cryptids that with technology they've pulled out some incredible detail out of the footage that Patterson and that guy shot, right? I mean, it's just incredible, right? And you're looking at it going, wow, that's amazing. And yet, and I watch the stuff on YouTube and the Thunker and guys like that. It's funny. We got that footage from the 60s that they continue to work on, kind of like the Shroud of Turin, and they clean it up and show more and show more. But generally, I'm speaking in generalities here, generally, we reverted to potato cam now, where we can't even use AI to pull the stuff out of the new videos, but we can go back to that video and just continue to pull out more information. Isn't that, with all of those cameras out there on the ranches and the fences and the trees and everywhere, and Dave Aaron, Video Dave Aaron, used to say the reason we can't get anything better than potato cam is because they know it and they'll mess with our cameras. That might have worked when we had thousands of cameras. Maybe not a billion cameras, right? I mean, maybe that's a little harder, plus the newer technology. But I just find it interesting that they keep on pulling more out of the Patterson footage. And I watch the stuff like you, Don, and I see all kinds of interesting looking stuff, but that's why that's why a lot of people think the Patterson film is fake, because it's just like the holy grail, broad daylight, walking around. They cleaned it up, and you can get side boobage and all this stuff, and it's like, wow, it's just too good to be true, right?
Well, speaking of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, I had a very interesting connection that I made in my mind. You guys are all familiar with it's lauded as one of the first literary works in human history, the Epic of Gilgamesh out of Sumeria. Yeah. You guys are all familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And in that story, apparently Gilgamesh, when he became king after his father passed, was one bullheaded, oppressive SOB. All right. And according to the story, the people of his city moaned and wailed to the gods, to rein this guy in. And the gods decided, well, they'll do that. And they basically put him in contact with what was described as a wild man. And this wild man, all right, when Gilgamesh met him, they ended up battling for several days, all right, before Gilgamesh was finally able to subdue him. Now, Gilgamesh, his physical stature was described as being, now listen to this, maybe 14, 15 feet in height. He was, according to the legends, all right, the product of his human father and a Anunnaki goddess. All right, so he, if this is to be believed, he had basically ET heritage in him. And this wild man sounds almost hauntingly like a Bigfoot creature, a Bigfoot Sasquatch type creature. Have you guys ever looked into that?
No.
Well, it does, Don. We've talked about this before, and it does bring up a lot of very interesting touches in other parts. You have in the Bible, First Testament, Old Testament, first part of the Bible, however you refer to that, where you have beings that are of huge stature, that are just gigantic. Obviously, David and Goliath being one of them, but there's others in there. There are countless records and accounts of in museums all through Eastern Europe of skeletal remains, especially large skulls, large bones that are human or have human type design, meaning they walk upright. They don't have the large ape family. The separation is there. So this is, to me, has always been extremely interesting. Just recently, the last maybe, 8 years, 10 years, I've heard a lot talking about that Neanderthal didn't die out, that there was intermingling between Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon, that some people share that genetic coding as opposed to others who don't.
Ron Perlman.
Say again?
Ron Perlman.
He's living proof that evolution doesn't always work.
So as I
just saw him last night. I rewatched Pacific Rim.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, what a tool that guy was.
He was voted most likely not to ever have to wear prosthetic makeup when he played a monster when he was in high school.
Well, Don, he played his real self in the movie, right? So,
Yeah, right.
But anyway, this thing about giants. Now, everybody has heard. There's actually a couple of
Kandahar.
stories.
Yep.
Well, yeah, but I wasn't thinking about that.
All
I
right.
was thinking about right here in the United States, back in the 19th century, in the 50s, 60s, 70s of the 19th century, a lot of gigantic humanoid type bones were found, okay, and sent back to the Smithsonian Institute, where they mysteriously disappeared. All right. Allegedly, mysteriously, they disappeared. But there was one, I think it was the Paiute Native American tribe that fought a war against red-haired giants that were basically using the Native Americans, were killing them and cannibalizing them. I'm sure you guys heard about that, these red-haired giants. So yeah, I think there is something there, but what the hell happened to them all?
How about this? Partially responsible for this. With better nutrition and things, we've gotten bigger as a species. So if you're talking about a long time ago when they're eating lint and dust balls and they're not getting that big, could it have been possible that there were some people who just had the opportunity for better foods and better nutrition, who over time were just bigger? And what I mean by bigger is the mid 6 footers to mid 7 footers that we see all the time now in basketball and things. But back then they were seeming like really giants compared to these people who are 5 foot tall. I'm not saying
Mark,
that accounts for all of them.
You touch upon, if you're bigger and stronger, then you are going to get more protein and more calories than everybody else.
Right.
And if you are physically, of a height difference, when the average height was probably someplace in the 4 foot category, you're talking double the height. I mean, I'm sure you've been on older ships, the USS Constitution. If you look at the racks, the beds on the USS Constitution, a ship that goes back, 2.5 centuries, they're incredibly small. I mean,
right.
That's because the average height was no more than 5 feet.
Right.
It was, probably between 4.5 and 5 feet. And you have exceptionally, big people that show up. So if you're stronger, you're going to get more calories.
But George Washington was over 6 feet tall.
Sure, I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying that George Washington was, grabbing and eating other people's sheep and goats and stuff like that. Let's not even go down that path, Don. Talking about the father of the country. I don't.
Goat eater, goat eater.
I mean, this is gonna end up with that. Did Abe Lincoln really kill vampires based on that?
Yes,
I saw the movie. I saw the movie.
I thought it's a documentary.
So it doesn't surprise me that you would have that. On the other end of the scale, Mary Joyce, friend of mine down in North Carolina, her site, Saucers Over the Cachers. She has a really interesting site. She did extensive work in North Carolina with the Native American tradition on the opposite end of the scale. These little people that were running around in the woods there. And she has documented a lot of evidence that when they were building one of the university buildings, they found these very well developed tunnels that were made for very small people if they were done by people, dug in the dirt there. And it's very interesting. They talk about these. So are these people coming out of the Irish Celtic tradition? So that we have really big redheaded people come over and show up? Well, we know that all along Newfoundland, Maine, what is now Maine now, Massachusetts, we've had all kinds of Viking explorers. and settlements that attempted. You know, a lot of the names for things here talk about grapes, because grapes and the collection of grapes was a huge industry to grab. I mean, they would come here. You know, so the vineyards and all those kinds of things you hear, that's Vinelands. That's why you hear that, because they came here and they found grapes. Did the small people, the leprechauns, accompany them? It fits in there. There seems to be evidence, but once again, you have these reports and then it disappears. And all I can go to is that scene in the first Raiders of the Lost Ark. Top men. We have top men working.
Men. Who?
Top
men. Well, you know, the problem I've heard about with the leprechauns is the Native Americans kept trying to steal their little charms.
You had to go there. I mean, I would have been disappointed if you didn't. The only thing that could make it better
You
now
were
is
expecting it. I saw it in your eyes.
some of that drink out your nose, because you really deserve to go with my Lucky Charms.
So when it comes to something like the Kandahar thing, let's say something like that happened. Clearly, we're not going to get the information out of the military, the government, etc. But would you think that something like that, if known by the locals, would, especially since it happened at the time of cell phones and other communication, it wasn't that, you know, it wasn't 100 years ago. Would you think that that would have leaked out in some other natural form through just the society who's out there, or is it just so remote and so horrible and hot and miserable out there that something like that, because he's eating people evidently to stay alive, and cows and stuff, you would think possibly that would have broke earlier than the military breaking, or that story, right?
Well, that story originally came out around 2014, 2015.
Right. Yeah. But the technology was available, and you know,
well, they probably weren't aware of that, though. I mean,
I think they would have had to, because this thing was eating something.
Thing.
I mean, to feed something like this, like Bigfoot or whatever, it's going to need a lot of protein, man. So they're going to start wondering, where are our goats and sheep's going? We're beginning to lose a lot of this stuff, right? So just seems like it came out of left field.
Well, you know, I would love I would love to totally believe that situation happened.
I would too.
Not for the guy that died.
Well, of course.
But no, I'm talking about the soldier, not the creature.
Yes.
But you know, there's something about it. I'm kind of like Fox Mulder in that way. I want to believe, but I'm very careful about what I do believe. All right, you gotta see some evidence and some facts about it.
I kind of put that story right in tandem with those guys who met that Black Ops group and they gave the weapons to them and said, I kind of put it in that. They didn't give them up.
They allowed them to disarm them while the weapon's still on them. And that's just bullshit. You don't do that.
Right.
Nobody does that.
Well, they claimed that they had a physical emotional reaction to the presence of these beings.
Yeah.
I
had an emotional attachment to my M16 too, and then my grease.
Damn right.
and I had a deep emotional attachment to my father's Playboys. All right.
Didn't we all? I did too. Not your dad's, but my dad's.
Yeah,
that'd be weird if I had one for your dad.
No, it'd be fine. It would be a circle of some sort, Gary.
Oh my!
I'm not going to go there where I know that joke is going.
I got to tell you, I discovered back in 1961 that there definitely was a difference between boys and girls when I saw my first photograph of Ursula Andress.
Oh my goodness!
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
my heavens.
And you didn't have to be a biologist, right?
No.
Well, obviously, Don can never be a Supreme Court justice, but we'll leave
No.
that.
And I don't
So-
think I'd want him as that.
I would. I think it would be fun for at least a month.
Yeah, right.
So let me throw something into you. This is completely off the wall. Any of you guys use Roku?
Oh yeah,
yes.
that's
I do.
all I use.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple Roku TVs. I love now their smart TV. You put it up on the wall, you get it into your Wi-Fi. Bingo. I mean,
yeah, it's great.
if you want to do paid stuff, it's just tremendous. And they're easy to put their devices. You go online. Well, on the two new TVs that I put up, when you go over to the Roku icon, a little flying saucer shows up and then disappears on their icon before you can open it.
Right.
I've never seen that.
It's on the two most recent purchases under 6 months. I used to have the one that had the aquarium, and I could sit there for hours. Just
Yeah, that's what I have now.
aquarium.
I've got the Roku 4, and I got two of them. I love it. It's great.
I was just curious what they're up to with the flying saucer. What's happening? Because it's a very cartoonish 1950s invasion of the saucer
It's just
kind
the
of
culture.
image.
It's just the culture.
Wow, Mark!
Okay,
thanks for help carrying that more
Yeah,
than 30 seconds.
Just absolutely slap that shit down
speaking of flying saucers,
Okay.
this is a little story that came from the pages of UFO magazine back when Vicki and I were publishing UFO magazine. We had a friend, and Mark, you'll know who it is. Russ Estes.
Oh yeah, Big Russ,
who was a TV producer guy, and we were very, very good friends. And anyway, he loved, and he used to bring us a lot of stuff to the magazine, and he loved the whole topic of UFOs. So one day, and this is back about 1992, maybe 91. He called me up, and he lived in an area called Apple Valley. All right, Mark, you know where that's at.
I do. It's up by Victorville.
It's out in the boondocks. And he called up and said, "Hey," he said, "I've got a photograph here that he said I want to bring down and show you." And he said, "I don't know what to make out of it. The guy that gave it to me had a hell of a story." And I said, okay. Just don't tell me anymore. Bring the picture down. Then you can lay it all out. So he did. He brought this thing over. And it was a photograph taken from a guy's living room, allegedly, through a side window. And on the side, out this side window, was what appeared to be a gray alien. Okay? This was a Polaroid. And I looked at this thing, and I didn't know what the hell to make out of it. And on the surface of the picture was like somebody had blown cereal that they were eating. It was sticking to the picture. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
They boo-hoo, and you got crap all over the picture. And I looked and I said, "Russ, what the hell is this?" He said, "Okay, this is what the guy told me. He was in his living room and he was watching TV, and he heard what he thought he heard was a noise by this window. And he looked over and he saw this alien, and he grabbed his Polaroid and snapped the picture." Well, there's something about that didn't strike me as I don't know. It sounded bogus, but they said, "Okay, all right. So what's the guy's name? He told me the guy's name. And I said, well, I'd like to call him up and talk to him. And he said, well, he wouldn't give me his phone number. Ah, well, there's flag number 2. Wouldn't give you his phone number. Well, okay. So let's take this thing and do a cursory examination, right? So we got a whiteboard. I put this thing up on a whiteboard. I got my video cam out. I set it up. I had a tripod. I set it up on the tripod. And I shot a few feet of this thing, okay? And then I said, you know, this damn supposed alien struck me as, I've seen this somewhere before. Well, at UFO Magazine, we used to get stuff from our readers all the time. And somebody had sent us a petroleum magazine. I forget what the corporation was, but it was all about petroleum, drilling, all that kind of stuff.
Drill, baby,
but
drill.
in this particular magazine, when you opened up the cover, you went into the first 2 pages, ads. And all these ads were UFO themed. Okay. And in there was this alien. And honest to God, it was almost an exact match for this photograph. So we figured out real quick that this guy was bogus. And I told Russ, I said, when you go back and if you see this guy, do me a favor, would you? He said, what? I said, tell him I think he's full of shit. All right, trying to pull one over on us. But, you know, these kind of things happened off and on.
Some researcher you are, Don. You lost the opportunity to tell the guy, if you could have talked to him, any American male with a super Polaroid self-developing camera's got naked photos of his wife. You should have asked to see those to prove that he knows how to use the camera, right? Come on.
Or his girlfriend. Or his
girlfriend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
Jerry, say it.
you see your wife?
Or
No?
both.
Want to buy some?
Or both, yeah.
What Cobra?
No. Jerry got the rim shot with, do you want pictures? The Rodney Dangerfield line. Do you have
Gary is a rim shot.
Yeah, or rim job. I've heard both. I grew up on Benny Hill, so I love that fucking joke.
Don, I remember in your magazine, which, I subscribe to, and there was so many otherwise thought of as...
That was Bailey, by the way.
Yes. There was so many photos back then that were just, in hindsight especially, ridiculous, man. Just ridiculous photos, right? I mean, a lot of that stuff from Adamski. I'm sorry. When I saw his Super 8 films, I'm looking at that going, well, this doesn't look real at all, right? I mean, a lot of the Meyer stuff looked better than that. Not all of it, of course, but some of it did. Yeah, crazy.
I said that to a girl once. They don't look real. Can I take pictures and test them out?
Hey, what's your new show going to focus on there, Cobra?
Well, if you followed my old one in any way, I really like to do the interview where I just have the person talk. We don't really.
It was a little silly, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it will be an hour or 2 hours long, and it's all around subjects. Like the guy that I want to have first is a longtime researcher in high-speed aircraft. He's a guy who physically worked on the aircraft and has done extensive work with X-planes, doing hypersonics and space travel. And he's really put out a lot of great information. And I just want to like Josh with him. I will ask everybody, just about everybody on there. I've asked. In fact, one of my dear friends who passed away about a year ago, he was on Operation, I want to say Green Turnip. I'm getting it wrong. I'll have to look up the name now. It's escaping me. But John was the pilot that was flying a OSS modified B-24 that put in the most successful behind the lines mission. It was 2 U.S. OSS officers and a Austrian defector who joined. They all were in their uniforms, and he talks about this. It took them 2 attempts to bring them in. These guys parachuted out of the airplane into Austria on a frozen lake, 100 knot crosswinds, that he brought that thing at night to bring it in, get it below the lip of the thing. These guys parachute out, and it was Inglorious Bastards is what it's based on, because these guys were behind the lines. And the way it was is everybody was in their uniforms. So if they got caught by Americans, the U.S. guys would say, well, this Austrian guy's our prisoner, and vice versa. The Austrian guy would say, hey, these guys are mine. And they did all kinds of interesting operations. John caught up with the lead guy. Generally, they never got to meet, but there was a delay. Before they could go in, they had to do very numerous attempts. And they found out 20, 30 years after World War II, they were living very close to each other in Virginia. And they got together and socialized a little bit. Just absolutely amazing, the stories that go on. So I try to record a lot of those kind of conversations, and it's across the spectrum. So I'm going to try to return to that. I'll probably have all you guys on, because a lot of people really do like to know a little bit about it. So I don't ask, super probing questions. In the case of Jerry, it's just I put a stop and go sign up when him and I get going, because it's he's just flying. I can't slow him down as he's revealing all the family jewels, so to speak.
Probing.
So, but it's a lot of fun, and it's just the present job I'm on is absolutely sideways with good things to do. So it's just been killing me to get caught up into this new world of running stream here and getting everything lined up. So
you're going to be leaving again soon, aren't you?
Yes, about 10, 15 days headed to the Mideast.
So as an intelligent guy, what is your view of this? I told this to Don. I don't think I talked to Gary about it, because I don't talk to him unless I have to.
Yeah, he doesn't talk to me unless he has to.
So you know who Candace Owen is, right? The attractive black girl, speaks well, has a good handle on politics and a lot of the social stuff.
Doesn't know shit about science.
So I'm watching a podcast with her, and they ask her about the moon landing and dinosaurs. She doesn't believe we went to the moon, and she doesn't believe in dinosaurs. And when I look at something like that, I say, this person isn't stupid. This person is intelligent, went to school, has a pretty well-rounded view of the world and such. But she might as well believe the earth is flat. And I just, in my head, as a junior college graduate and a MacGyver, I don't understand how an otherwise very intelligent person can come away with views like this. I don't get it.
So I feel very fortunate. I got to meet the last man that stood on the moon. And I found him to be one of the most genuine and nicest guys. He probably gave the greatest compliment I've ever heard from someone who did what he did. That he really appreciated all the guys and gals that came after him, that were still manning aircraft carriers and in frontline units all through Europe. When he got selected to go off to be an astronaut, protected the United States, protected our interests. And he really paid a big compliment, because he knew that he had been absolutely blessed to get on this. And this is Mr. CERN, and he put his daughter's name. He wrote his daughter's name on the surface of the moon before he left. I thought that was one of those things. And his book, Last Man on the Moon, I stood in line. I was the last guy at the Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola to meet him. And he was as gracious as if I was the first person. And I mean, that guy was there signing books, took the time with every person there, and including me. And I asked him, and he inscribed the book from one great dad to another great dad. And I gave my dad the book, because my dad was crazy about the whole space program. And as you guys know, on the UFO stuff. So getting back to Miss Owen, I do understand why people think that we may have faked the moon landings. After meeting people that are there, no. But often, in the effort to look better than we are, we definitely put out photographs that were changed to give better PR capability. And that's the kind of stuff that fuels the conspiracy,
Right.
And, and then you get to a point where you have such distrust. Okay. I mean, for God's sakes, we talked about this the other night. We still don't, we're going to find out hopefully about JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King. Fantastic. Okay. But we don't even know what happened to Lincoln and his assassination and what was the conspiracy behind that. And you would think by this time, we would be able to work through that and get some of the records out to at least point to a more conclusive what happened behind the story there with him. It's an incredible the amount of stuff that he did, hiding to get into D.C., acting as an invalid, traveling with a nurse and a Pinkerton guard on the train, brought in, hidden on trains to get him out because they knew people were after. It's just amazing. And we don't have the clear story. I'm hopeful in this one. But we live in an age. You're watching the X-Files. My God, that's the whole basis of the X-Files, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to peel back the layers of the conspiracy because we have self-appointed bettors who go and tell us the masses can't handle this. Okay? They can't handle it. So we're not going to put this information out.
No,
and when
I was just saying,
go ahead.
I understand the moon thing, right? How,
okay, I know. I have nothing.
But the dinosaur thing?
I got nothing on the dinosaur. What can I tell? I don't know what to say. Poor educational experience.
I don't think so, though, based on everything else about, and I'm not picking on her. I just
she seems very educated to not know.
That's an example of a highly educated person who seems to have a handle on life, who says, dinosaurs, I'm not buying it. It's like, you've got to be kidding me.
The bones.
I know.
So let me give you, Mark, it may lead into something we're going to discuss later on this week on UAP Crossfire. So I had another tag that came to me on an email. Come on, Commander Cobra, what do you think is going on? So as I was talking about our helicopter and egg, oh, by the way, our listener from UAP is listening tonight. I'm jumping back and forth between screens. And he said that the helicopter he had derived from listening and other things he'd heard was a Bell 212, which is a twin-engine Huey. It is something that could lift in the neighborhood of maybe a ton pretty easily. It doesn't have a port in the belly that you could look down, as I was describing before, if it was a bigger helicopter. But if there's a GoPro type sensor camera there so that the crew can see what it is with, looking straight down, that would show up on the screen. So that might give the explanation, or it's coming off the hoist. It really looks like it's a belly position to me, just the stability, because that was right under the transmission and that's right under the rotors. And that gives you your best stability. Mm-hmm. When you put it off to the side, now you're entering all kinds of moments, because it's up and forward and up. So that would make sense if the aircraft it's fairly lightweight on that. So I just tried to throw that out, that we got some of the best audience on the planet, as I've always said in the past, and people are always engaging. What about the UAPs in New Jersey? Things have gone silent. We're waiting for the president to put something out. Someone said to me, what do you think is going on? And I said, I think they're testing. And I think that they are engaging in some stuff out there. Well, why would you test there? Well, you might have a target. There might be something to go look at. And also, you may want to have the world see it. But the reason you would do something as obvious in one of the most densely populated areas in the world might be to signal that you have a capability that's going on. And that's the reason why you're doing this. And I don't think it's the drones themselves. I think it's what the drones are carrying or the UAS systems are carrying. That might be what's happening here. And I think that may be what is maybe something that it's responding to. But the reason this is happening, and if you remember, we've had some other major bases that had some very interesting activity. I'm not talking about the small, the person that's overstaying their student visa from the People's Republic of China. The guy who's going to school, graduate school in Michigan, but he took vacation in Virginia, and he just happens to be flying a drone all over Norfolk Naval Air Station and Naval Station. And it gets stuck in a tree, and he tries to convince the guy, hey, I need to come on your property, get my drone. It got stuck. And the guy, yeah, let me see your driver's license or ID, takes a picture of it, because the guy says, maybe I should leave. I'm not talking about those kind of events. I'm talking about the ones where at night, very specific time period, things shut down. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is one of the latest one that happened. And bam, off you go. So, X-Lady, so great to see you're still around. I haven't talked to you in ages. I think that's what's happening. I think that's why it might be slow before the president releases, but I think he is going to put something out. I will put forth that you do something like this because it's serious enough that you're not going to, this is more of an operational test, and you may actually have a specific mission target set you're going after. And we know there's a lot of activity because of the man that's now seated in the White House, and it doesn't surprise me in the least that would happen. But it's pretty dramatic.
Well, the litmus test, as I see it at this point, is whether the JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King files are released.
Exactly. If those get released, that's a huge signal to the swamp, right?
Well, I'm going to put one more spin on that.
They need to be completely not redacted.
Yeah, exactly.
That black on there.
You're completely going. I can see it coming out, but if it's filled with redactions,
what's the point?
What's the point?
Yeah. Why did we bother doing this?
Right. Hey, I sent out a bunch of stuff that I collected off the shorts, off of Facebook and YouTube, and they're probably AI create. I mean, I know they're fake, but they may
those
be
videos, yeah.
Right. And I sent those out because I wanted to ask Cobra his general view on, in 5 years, based on the acceleration of the quality of AI and such, we're going to get to the point where we really can't tell and we can't believe anything. How do you think that's going to affect the research and the paranormal as a term in like five years, especially for the new people who are coming up who don't have the decades that some of us have in?
I think we're entering a very scary period, because if you don't have any kind of moral guidance on this, I'm not asking you to be religious. I'm not asking you to identify with an ultimate being that created the universe, but you don't have any moral coding. And I don't think the PRC has any moral coding. You're going to start flooding stuff where you're going to see political figures doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing, and it's going to look as real as ever. You're going to have things that are based on religions, customs, traditions, societal norms that are going to be all over the place. And the ability to do it is going to be, or to determine what's up and down is terrible. So,
well, gentlemen,
we're headed to very bad times.
We are under a minute before the show must end. Okay. I wanted to mention that Thursday evening, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, on UAP Crossfire, we're going to have a nuclear expert, Mr. Robert Hastings, on, who has done for decades extensive research on the UFO, UAP, and nuclear weapons beat. This promises to be a fascinating, if not terrifying, show. And Commander Cobra will be there along with Chris DiPerno, myself, and
the Padre, Dan Carlson.
Padre Dan Carlson. So with that being said, gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you. Commander Cobra, as always, a distinct pleasure.
It's an honor to be asked.
This week. That's it for this week, gang, and we'll see you next time. So have a great week. Bye-bye.
God bless Sam and Dean Winchester.